I never thought I'd be the type of person to get blindsided in the most humiliating way possible. I mean, people talk about betrayal like it's some abstract concept. You hear it in movies, read it in magazines, maybe even laugh about it with friends, but you never really feel it until it slams into your life like a brick. For me, it happened during what should have been the highlight of my career, and the one person I trusted the most turned out to be the one digging the knife in. We hosted a relationship podcast. It was one of those top-rated shows on Spotify and Apple, where we prided ourselves on dissecting love, commitment, and trust. People loved us. We were the couple, or rather the duo, everyone looked to for guidance. Our listeners thought they were getting insight into healthy relationships, but what they didn't know was how fragile the foundation was beneath all that polished talk. I built my career around authenticity, honesty, and heart-to-heart conversations, and I thought my co-host, someone I'd known for almost a decade, felt the same way. I was wrong. It started like any other day. Early morning, the kind where you're sipping black coffee and scrolling through emails before the chaos of recording starts. I had a rundown of topics ready, listener questions, some personal stories I was willing to share, some advice that was actually helpful, and I was feeling good. There was this calm before the storm, that rare moment where everything aligns, and you think maybe, just maybe, life is treating you fairly. My co-host, Jenna, was already in the studio when I walked in, headphones around her neck, hair pulled into a messy bun, sipping iced tea. Jenna and I had an easy chemistry on mic. She was witty, smart, and could read my pauses better than anyone else. Off mic, we were close enough to call each other friends, but not the kind of friends who shared every single thought or secret. That was my mistake. I assumed closeness meant loyalty. Recording went smoothly, as always. We laughed, we debated, we shared insights into navigating jealousy, commitment, the messy corners of love that nobody talks about. Our listeners loved that raw honesty. By mid-afternoon, we wrapped up, and I was scrolling through my phone, replying to a few texts from Alex, my fiancé at the time. I had met him a couple of years prior at a work event in Chicago, and honestly, it had felt like the universe finally decided to stop messing with me. Alex was the kind of guy who could make your chest tighten just by smiling. Sweet, attentive, and terrifyingly loyal. I thought he was untouchable in that way. I mean, you hear about cheating and betrayal happening to other people, in other lives, not yours, and certainly not someone like Alex. But then it happened. That afternoon, as I was packing up my things to head out, I saw it. The text preview on Jenna's phone that she'd left on the counter while grabbing her water bottle. My name flashed in the preview from Alex's number, followed by something flirtatious, intimate even. At first, I froze. I stared at the screen like maybe it was a hallucination. Maybe I had been reading too fast, seeing what I didn't want to see. But no. There it was, plain as day. My co-host, my so-called friend, texting my fiancé behind my back. And the words weren't innocent, not at all. They were the kind of words you only send to someone you want in your bed, the kind that make your stomach drop and your brain scream, "This is real, this is happening." I didn't confront her right then. I couldn't. My hands were shaking so badly I thought I might drop my laptop. My chest felt tight like someone had twisted it in a vice. I sat down, head in my hands, trying to process what I had just seen. I kept thinking maybe it was a mistake, maybe some kind of weird joke or misunderstanding, but deep down I knew the truth. I'd seen enough betrayal to recognize it in the wild. I knew the tone, the timing, the subtle play of words that didn't belong in a friendship. And every second I stared at that phone, the room seemed to close in around me. Jenna hummed some tune, oblivious to the storm raging in me, and I wanted to scream, to tell her everything, to make the world stop spinning for a minute so I could breathe. The drive home was a blur. Chicago traffic, the city stretching endlessly around me, and I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting Alex to have texted me, half hoping he hadn't. My mind was spinning 1,000 miles an hour. Questions I didn't want answers to kept popping up. How long had this been going on? Was this a one-time thing or ongoing? Had he been lying to me all along too? The more I thought about it, the more my reality fractured. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my love, my career felt fragile, like it could shatter with a single push. I didn't go straight home. I couldn't face him yet. Instead, I pulled into a small diner off Michigan Avenue, one of those old-school spots with vinyl booths and flickering neon. I needed space to think, to feel, to let the betrayal sink in before I confronted anyone. I ordered black coffee and sat in silence, staring at the condensation on my glass, pretending I was okay.
pretending I could keep it together. Around me, people were laughing, couples were holding hands, parents were arguing over pancakes. I hated them all in that moment. Each happy scene was a reminder of what I had, what I might be losing. I tried calling Jenna first. She didn't answer, obviously. Then Alex. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break my ribs. He picked up after a few rings, cheerful as ever, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Hey babe, how's your day?" I wanted to scream, "Don't you dare act normal," but I didn't. I swallowed, tried to keep my voice steady, and just said, "We need to talk. Now." That pause on the line, that pause was a punch to the gut, the kind you can't fake, the kind that tells you the world has tilted on its axis. When I got home, the apartment felt suffocating. I paced back and forth, half expecting to catch them in some dramatic tableau of guilt. But there was nothing, just silence. Empty bottles of wine from the weekend, a stack of mail I hadn't sorted, and the cruel reality that my life was splitting into before this and after this. I wanted to confront Alex immediately, but I couldn't stop thinking about Jenna. How long had this been happening behind my back while we gave relationship advice to thousands of listeners? How could someone I laughed with on mic, who knew my most personal fears, betray me in this way? The anger bubbled in my chest, but beneath it was a deep, gnawing sadness. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about the violation of trust, about watching someone I loved and someone I considered a friend pick me apart quietly behind closed doors. I decided I needed evidence before confronting either of them. My hands shook as I dug through Jenna's texts that I somehow accessed, and each one was worse than the last. Flirty, suggestive, intimate, not a single line that suggested friendship. And Alex's replies weren't denying anything. They were encouraging, laughing at jokes, planning secret meetings. My head spun so hard I felt like I might black out. Every word I read was like a punch to my gut. I realized then that this wasn't a mistake, wasn't a slip, it was deliberate, and it made it even worse.
That night, I sat in my bedroom, the lights off, staring at the ceiling. I tried to make sense of what I felt. Anger, heartbreak, confusion, self-loathing. I replayed every conversation with Alex, every friendly exchange with Jenna, every laugh we shared on mic. Did I miss the signs? Was I too trusting? How had I not seen it coming? Sleep didn't come. I thought about the podcast, our listeners, the people who looked up to us, and it hit me that this betrayal wasn't just private. It was public, professional, the kind that could destroy everything I'd built. The irony was cruel. A show about trust and commitment, hosting discussions about honesty, while my own life was unraveling in secret. I remember waking up the next morning feeling hollow. I went through the motions, got ready for the recording, and sat in the studio like nothing had happened. Jenna was there, chatting, making jokes, her hair slightly messy again, coffee in hand, completely unaware, or pretending to be. I wanted to scream, to point out every lie, to throw my laptop across the room, but instead, I smiled, nodded, and recorded the episode like a professional. It was surreal. People might think I'm some composed, strong person in moments like these, but inside, I was cracking. Every word I spoke felt like betrayal. Every laugh we shared on mic felt like another stab. I couldn't believe the world was functioning normally while my life was imploding. After we wrapped, I went straight to my car, hands shaking, heart racing, tears threatening to fall. I didn't know how to confront either of them. Didn't know if I wanted answers or just to disappear entirely. The idea of calling Alex, of asking him why, of forcing him to look me in the eyes while I asked the question that kept repeating in my head, why, was unbearable. And Jenna? Jenna was supposed to be my ally, my confidant, my partner in crime on the podcast. To think she had been texting him while I poured my soul into our discussions about fidelity and honesty made me feel like I'd been gaslit my entire life. Like maybe I was too naive to see the real world, too trusting to survive in a world of people who lie and cheat without a second thought. Hours later, I texted Alex, "We need to talk. Tonight. No excuses." No response. And Jenna? I didn't even know where to start. I kept thinking about all the moments we had shared, the recordings, the planning, the casual lunches, the jokes about love and relationships, and it felt like some cruel cosmic joke. My entire career, my entire life was built on authenticity, and in one afternoon, that authenticity had been stripped away from me like a rug pulled under my feet.
I spent the rest of the day in a haze, staring out the window of my apartment in River North Chicago, watching the snow start to fall. It was quiet, beautiful, and indifferent to the chaos of my life. The city continued on, people moving, living, loving, oblivious to the fact that my world had been upended by the two people I trusted most. I wanted to call someone, anyone, to explain what was happening, but there was no one who could understand. I felt trapped, suffocated, like a character in some dark drama I didn't audition for. And the worst part? I knew I'd have to confront them both eventually. I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. But the thought of facing them, of watching them lie, of forcing my heart to break in front of them, it was terrifying. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up until my eyes burned, scrolling through every conversation, replaying every moment, trying to piece together a timeline, trying to understand why. The betrayal wasn't just sexual, it was emotional, professional, and psychological. I had given my trust freely, openly, without reservation, and they had weaponized it against me. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny, angry part of me wanted revenge, wanted to expose them, wanted to make them feel even a fraction of what I felt. But another part, a quieter, sadder part, just wanted to disappear, to let the world continue without me for a while. By the time morning came, I was exhausted, hollow, and broken. I knew I had to make a decision: confront them, walk away, or crumble completely. Every option seemed terrifying, but doing nothing wasn't possible. I realized in that moment that betrayal changes you. It doesn't just hurt you, it reshapes your world, your perceptions, your ability to trust. And no amount of advice, no podcast, no professional demeanor could protect you from the raw, unfiltered pain of watching someone you loved destroy the life you thought you had built together. I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping my phone like it was the last lifeline I had. And then I sent a message to Jenna. It was simple, deliberate, and cold. We need to talk. Now. Jenna didn't respond immediately. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my thumb hovering over my phone like if I touched it I might break something irreparably. I knew she was avoiding me. I could feel it. And yet the thing that hurt the most wasn't her avoidance. It was knowing she had been hiding something from me for months while I poured my soul into that podcast, while I shared my own heartbreaks, my own trust issues, my own fears about relationships with thousands of listeners who trusted us. I thought we were partners in more than just a show. I thought we were friends. But all of that had been a lie. I felt like a fool, like every laugh we shared, every intimate confession had been a setup for this humiliation. Finally, my phone buzzed. Jenna's name flashed across the screen, but it wasn't a text, it was a call. I didn't even hesitate. I answered, my voice tight, shaking, like I was trying to force words through a sieve of rage and disbelief. "Hello?" she said, the casualness in her tone immediately setting off alarms in my chest. She sounded calm, almost too calm. "Where the hell have you been?" I blurted, my voice rising despite myself. "Why are you texting Alex behind my back? How long has this been going on?" My words tumbled out, raw and jagged. There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear her inhale sharply, like she was weighing her next move. "Look, it's not what you think," she said finally. Her voice was soothing, practiced, the same tone she used on mic when diffusing heated arguments between listeners. I laughed bitterly, a sound that shocked even me. "Not what I think? Jenna, I read the texts. You were planning dates, flirting with him, and laughing at jokes I've never heard. How is that not what I think?" My chest tightened. "You've been sneaky, manipulative, and you knew exactly what you were doing. And Alex, he didn't stop you. He encouraged it." Another pause. I could hear her fidgeting on the other side, shifting in her chair, and I wanted to shake the phone through the screen to make her feel the weight of her betrayal. "I didn't mean for it to get out of hand," she said finally, voice quivering slightly. "I didn't know it would, affect things." "Like affect things?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You destroyed everything. You destroyed our friendship, our trust, and possibly my relationship. Do you even understand how this feels?" I felt tears prickle at the corners of my eyes, the mix of rage and heartbreak too heavy to carry alone. "Do you understand that I wake up thinking I'm going to lose the person I love the most because of you?"
I didn't know," she whispered, almost inaudible. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't know. I got caught up." Caught up. Those two words were like a slap. Caught up? That's what she called months of secret texts, private plans, emotional manipulation, and betrayal? I felt my stomach twist violently, bile rising, and I almost hung up right there. But some small, sad part of me wanted to hear everything from her own mouth, wanted her to acknowledge every lie she had told, every manipulation she had pulled. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked, voice breaking despite my attempt to stay steady. You call months of betrayal getting caught up? And Alex, what about him? Was he just as caught up, or did he know exactly what he was doing? I could hear her sigh, a long, heavy exhale that sounded like defeat. He knew, she admitted finally. And hearing that word, simple and horrifying, cut me deeper than I could explain. I slumped against the wall, phone still pressed to my ear, my whole body shaking. It was worse than I had feared. He hadn't just participated. He had facilitated it, encouraged it, made it safe, made it exciting. He had made choices that I had trusted him not to make. And they both chose to betray me together, like some cruel secret club that I wasn't invited to. I ended the call abruptly, throwing my phone onto the bed. I sank to the floor, curling up, trying to hold myself together. But holding together wasn't an option anymore. Not after knowing that the two people I had trusted most in my professional and personal life had actively conspired behind my back. My mind replayed every interaction I had with Alex over the last few months. Every sweet text, every casual joke, every little I love you that I thought was genuine. It all felt tainted, contaminated by their secret. And Jenna, I couldn't even process Jenna. She had been my friend for almost 10 years. She knew me, knew my boundaries, knew how deeply I loved Alex, and she had gone behind my back anyway. I spent the next few days in a haze. I couldn't go to the podcast studio, couldn't face our listeners, couldn't even scroll social media without feeling the weight of shame and betrayal pressing down on me. I stopped answering messages. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I just sat in my apartment in Lincoln Park, staring out the window at the snow-covered streets, trying to make sense of what had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Jenna's smug little smile, Alex's casual charm, the way they had orchestrated this without me knowing. And I hated it. I hated them. I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. I hated that life could be this cruel, this fast, this unforgiving. Eventually, I realized that ignoring it wasn't enough. I had to confront Alex, had to face him and demand the truth straight from his mouth. I couldn't live in this limbo, with half-truths and suspicions eating away at me. That night, I called him, and when he answered, I forced myself to sound calm, controlled, professional. Alex, we need to talk, tonight, at my place, alone. There was a long pause on the line. I could hear his deep breaths, hear the hesitation in his voice, the way he weighed his words. Okay, he said finally. I'll be there. When he arrived, I could feel my body trembling, even though I tried to appear composed. He stepped inside, smiling that easy, confident smile, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided my eyes. Hey, he said, casual, like nothing had changed, but I could feel every second of his calm cracking, like a thin sheet of ice over a frozen lake. Don't hey me, I said, voice sharp. You know why I'm upset. I watched as the color drained from his face, how his hands fidgeted, how he seemed suddenly small in the doorway. I saw the texts, Alex. I know everything. How long has this been going on? Months? Weeks? Tell me so I know how long you've been lying to me. He swallowed, his Adam's apple popping nervously. It wasn't supposed to happen, he said finally, voice cracking. I didn't mean to hurt you. Jenna, she started it. I didn't know how to say no. I don't know. I felt a hot surge of anger, like fire erupting in my chest. You don't know. Alex, I've loved you. I trusted you, and you don't know. I laughed bitterly, a sound so empty it echoed in the apartment. You knew exactly what you were doing. You didn't stop her. You encouraged her. You participated, and now you're trying to pin this on her. His face crumbled, guilt spreading across features I used to find comforting. I messed up, he admitted finally. I didn't mean to. I cut him off, voice rising. You didn't mean to. Alex, you slept with her emotionally, maybe physically, I don't know, and you want me to believe it was an accident, that somehow you're innocent in all this. I felt tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, not from heartbreak, but from rage so intense it felt like my skin was burning. You've destroyed us, destroyed me, and for what? For some thrill, some secret text conversation. Was it worth it, Alex? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at his hands, fidgeting, ashamed. And in that moment, I realized I didn't even recognize him anymore. The man I thought I knew, the man I loved, had disappeared, replaced by someone capable of lying, manipulating, and betraying me in the most intimate way possible. And the betrayal wasn't just physical or emotional, it was existential. It called into question everything I thought I understood about love, loyalty, and trust. I don't remember exactly what I said next. I know I told him to leave. I know I watched him walk out the door, each step echoing like a drumbeat through my apartment, and I collapsed against the wall, feeling hollow, broken, and utterly exposed. For hours I just sat there, letting the weight of what had happened settle, letting the fury and grief and confusion swirl inside me like a storm. By the time night fell, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same. Not with Alex, not with Jenna, not with the podcast, not with myself. Every part of my life had been infiltrated by betrayal, and I had to decide, do I salvage anything, or do I walk away
lies had layers I hadn't uncovered yet. The next week was hell. Jenna avoided the studio like the plague, giving lame excuses, while Alex tried calling and texting, pleading, apologizing, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every message felt like salt in the wound. The betrayal was too deep, the trust too fractured. And yet, part of me, the part that had loved both of them, wanted closure, wanted honesty, wanted some kind of explanation that would allow me to breathe again. Then came the most painful moment, opening our latest podcast episode for editing. Jenna had recorded her segment, joking about love, relationships, trust. The irony was unbearable. I had to sit there listening to her laugh, pretending she was offering genuine advice, while I knew she was the embodiment of everything she was talking about, dishonest, manipulative, untrustworthy. I almost vomited. And yet, for the sake of the show, for the listeners who believed in us, I kept editing, I kept smiling, I kept performing. That night, I cried.
Hard. I cried for myself, for the life I thought I had, for the betrayal, for the people I had trusted, for the illusion of love that had been stripped away. I cried because I was angry and sad and lonely and humiliated and utterly, completely broken. And yet, deep inside, beneath the layers of hurt, a spark of something else lingered. Resolve. I wouldn't let them completely destroy me. I wouldn't let their betrayal define me. I had to confront it. I had to process it. I had to survive it. Because surviving this wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about moving on. It was about reclaiming my life from two people who had treated me like I was disposable. It was about looking in the mirror and realizing that I didn't deserve this, and that I could rebuild, even if it hurt like hell. And God did it hurt like hell. The days after I confronted Alex and Jenna blurred together into a surreal nightmare. I kept replaying every moment of the last few months in my head like a broken record. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the texts, hear Jenna's voice, feel Alex's casual, dismissive charm. I tried to focus on the podcast, tried to get back to work, but every recording session felt like stepping into a minefield. The studio, once a place I loved, a place where I felt alive and creative, had become a battlefield. Every laugh, every joke, every conversational pause with Jenna made me flinch. And yet, I had no choice but to keep going. People were listening, our show was at the top of the charts, and despite everything, I had a responsibility to the audience. But each time I pressed record, I felt like I was performing in a play about a life that no longer belonged to me. Alex kept trying to reach me, leaving voicemails that alternated between pleading apologies and cold rationalizations. It meant nothing, he'd say. It was a mistake. Or, you have to understand, she just came on to me. She started it. Every word he spoke made me want to scream, throw the phone across the room, and never look back. But part of me, a small, stupid part of me, still wanted to understand why. Not because I wanted him back, not because I believed his lies, but because I needed to catalog the betrayal. I needed to know every facet of it so I could wrap my head around the fact that the person I loved had been sharing his heart and body with my so-called friend, while feeding me half-truths and performances of affection. One evening, I finally agreed to meet Alex. I told him to come to a quiet cafe on the north side, away from the usual bustle. I needed him to look me in the eyes, to explain himself without distractions. When he arrived, he was tense, pale, almost unrecognizable. He tried to smile, a weak, apologetic curl of his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I need to hear the truth," I said the moment he sat down. "No excuses, no deflections, just the truth, Alex." He ran a hand through his hair and exhaled slowly. "Okay, fine, I'll tell you everything." And he did. Months of secrets spilled across the table in fragments of whispered confessions. Every coffee date, every late-night message, every private joke, every flirtation, I heard about it all. He tried to frame it as if it had just happened in moments of weakness, as if somehow he had no control over it. But the more he spoke, the more I realized he had chosen it. Every step of the way, he had consciously engaged, knowingly crossed lines, and encouraged Jenna. The cold, calculated way he had built the emotional intimacy with her while pretending to nurture me, while pretending to be the perfect fiancé, made my stomach twist into knots. I had loved this person with everything I had, and he had spent months living a double life. And in a way, that was worse than cheating. It was strategy, premeditation, and deception that left me questioning everything I believed about love and loyalty.
After I left the cafe, I walked aimlessly through Lincoln Park, the cold biting at my face, my chest tight with anger and heartbreak. I felt like a stranger in my own life. Every street, every building, every familiar landmark felt alien, tainted by the knowledge that Alex and Jenna had been orchestrating this betrayal while I existed in blissful ignorance. The city around me seemed alive, indifferent to my pain, moving forward as if nothing had happened, and that realization crushed me. People lived their normal lives while my life had been upended, while I had been manipulated and lied to by the two people I trusted the most. I knew I couldn't stay silent, couldn't just pretend nothing happened and continue recording episodes with Jenna. The betrayal was too deep, too public, too intertwined with our professional lives. But confronting her, that was different. Jenna wasn't like Alex. She had charm, wit, and a way of making you doubt your own perceptions. I knew she would argue, manipulate, try to spin her side of the story, and I wasn't sure I had the energy to fight her at that point. Yet, avoiding it wasn't an option. I had to confront her in a way that left no room for her to hide behind excuses. I texted her, "Meet me at the studio. Now. We need to talk. No cameras, no audience, no excuses." She arrived 30 minutes later, perfectly coiffed, holding her latte, like she had no idea of the emotional devastation she had caused. The sight of her sent a wave of rage and disbelief crashing over me. How could someone act so normal, so untouched after everything they had done? "Sit down," I said, my voice sharp. She obeyed silently, her eyes flicking to mine, searching, maybe calculating. "I know everything, Jenna," I said, letting the words hang in the air. "Every text, every meeting, every lie you've told me. Every time you smiled at me like we were friends while secretly betraying me. Do you understand what you've done?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out immediately. I could see the tension in her jaw, the subtle tremor in her hands, the way her eyes darted around the room. And for the first time, I felt the power shift. She was no longer untouchable, no longer the person who could hurt me in secret. She was human, flawed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't been when she had been betraying me. I didn't think it would go this far," she said finally, voice trembling. "I didn't mean to," I repeated, voice rising. "You chose to do this. You knew exactly what you were doing, Jenna. You knew I trusted you. You knew I loved Alex, and you still went behind my back. That's not accident. That's betrayal." She looked down, silent. I could see her fingers tapping nervously against her latte cup. I got caught up," she whispered. That stupid phrase, "got caught up," had lost all its charm. It sounded hollow, weak, pathetic, and I felt an incredible mix of disgust and anger. "You got caught up? That's your excuse?" I asked, incredulous. "You destroyed a friendship, possibly my relationship, and the show we built together, and you call it getting caught up? Do you even understand what that does to a person?" Her lips quivered, and for a moment I thought she might break down, might cry, might finally acknowledge the pain she had caused. But instead, she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms defensively. "Look, I didn't think you'd find out. I didn't think it would matter." "It matters," I said firmly. "It matters because it's real. It's my life. It's my love. It's everything I believed was safe."
And you, both of you, tore it apart for what? A little thrill? Some secret texting? Some forbidden excitement? It's pathetic, Jenna. She flinched, and I knew my words hit their mark. But even as I felt vindicated, the exhaustion was crushing. The emotional toll of months of betrayal, of confronting the people I trusted, of staring into the faces of those who had hurt me, was almost unbearable. I realized then that this wasn't just a betrayal, it was an emotional hurricane, and I was drowning in it. After what felt like hours, Jenna finally spoke. I'm sorry," she said quietly. Not a plea for forgiveness, not an attempt to rationalize, just a simple, raw acknowledgement. And even that tiny admission brought a flood of emotions. Relief that she had finally said it. But also rage that it had taken this long. That it had taken so much pain for her to admit the truth. By the time I left the studio that night, Chicago was dark, cold, and silent. Snow had started falling again, soft and indifferent, covering the streets in a quiet blanket that contrasted sharply with the chaos in my heart. I walked alone, gripping my coat tightly around me, the weight of everything I had endured pressing down like a physical burden. I realized that life as I knew it had ended, that trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild, and that the people I had loved most could hurt me in ways I never imagined. That night, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not just for Alex, not just for Jenna,
but for myself. For the betrayal, for the naivete, for the love I had given freely, and the lies that had been returned. I cried for the version of myself who had believed in loyalty, in honesty, in love. And I cried for the future, uncertain and terrifying, that I would now have to navigate without the people I thought I could rely on. But amid the tears, there was a small, stubborn spark of clarity. I realized that surviving this wasn't about getting revenge. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about reclaiming my life, my voice, my dignity. It was about facing the world, facing my heartbreak, and finding a way to live, to create, to exist despite the treachery. And I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey toward healing, toward truth, and toward whatever semblance of trust I could rebuild in the future. The weeks that followed were some of the loneliest I've ever experienced. I stopped going to the studio with Jenna, stopped recording episodes with her, and slowly started reclaiming the space in my life that had been poisoned by their betrayal. It wasn't easy. Every street I walked, every coffee shop I passed, every place we had visited together, everything was tainted by memories of their deceit. The city felt like a stranger, too familiar in its routine, yet alien because my perception of the people in it had been shattered. I realized that betrayal doesn't just hurt, it rewires the world around you. It changes the way you see people, the way you move through life, the way you let anyone get close again. Alex tried to reach out again, leaving voice messages, texts, even showing up at my apartment unannounced. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I enjoyed punishing him, but because I was done being an audience to his excuses. I had loved him with everything I had, and that love had been met with deliberate manipulation and lies. Every "I'm sorry" felt like nails on a chalkboard, every plea like a sick joke. I realized that no matter what he said, no matter what he promised, he had already proven what he was capable of, and it wasn't love, it was selfishness, desire, and deception. Jenna disappeared from the podcast, and for a time from my life entirely. Part of me felt relief, but part of me was haunted by the intimacy we had shared, the friendship I had thought was unbreakable, the history that now felt like a lie. I replayed our conversations, our jokes, the way we had planned episodes together, trying to reconcile the person I knew with the person who could betray me so completely. I couldn't. And I realized that sometimes people show their true colors, and no amount of shared history or closeness can overwrite that. I started focusing on myself, on reclaiming the life outside the shadow of their treachery. I threw myself into work, into new projects, into therapy, into late-night runs through Lincoln Park when the city was quiet and empty, and I could think without interruption. I cried, screamed, and raged. I let myself feel everything I had been suppressing, the weight of the betrayal pressing down until it was almost unbearable. And then, slowly, I started to breathe again. Slowly, I started to remember that my life didn't have to be defined by their choices, that I could exist, even thrive, without them. I deleted every trace of their influence from my digital life, the texts, the emails, the reminders of what had happened. I changed passwords, blocked numbers, and forced myself to take back control of the spaces they had infiltrated. But it wasn't just about technology or access. It was about reclaiming emotional territory, about building walls around the parts of myself that had been exposed, violated, and exploited. I had to learn, painfully, that trust is fragile, and that protecting it sometimes means cutting people out completely, even if you loved them. Then came the hardest part, telling my story. Not for revenge, not for attention, but because I had to. I wrote an anonymous piece for a platform that reached thousands of readers, pouring every detail into it, the deception, the texts, the late-night secrets, the betrayal by someone I considered a friend, and the man I loved. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The act of writing it, of sharing it with the world in a controlled way, was cathartic. It allowed me to externalize the pain, to stop carrying it in my chest alone, and to see it for what it was, a lesson in human weakness, selfishness, and the consequences of misplaced trust. The response was overwhelming. People wrote to me with their own stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and deception. Some were worse, some were similar, some were incomprehensible. But all of them reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my experience, while devastating, was part of a larger pattern of human imperfection. And in that recognition, I began to find strength. Strength not from them, not from Alex or Jenna, but from myself, from my ability to survive, to feel, to process, and to rebuild. Months passed. The podcast continued, with new hosts and a fresh start. I listened occasionally, my heart tight, but my curiosity stronger than my grief. I realized that my connection to the show wasn't the betrayal. It was the audience, the work, the message we had once believed in. And while I could no longer participate, I could still value the impact it had, the conversations it sparked, and the lives it touched. It became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even when people you trust betray you in unimaginable ways, you can still find meaning and purpose in the work you love. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, people who had always been in my corner, and allowed them to support me in ways I hadn't permitted before. I went on long drives, explored neighborhoods I had never visited, and allowed myself moments of joy without guilt. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the anger started to dissipate.
Not completely. It would never disappear entirely, but it became manageable. I realized that anger, while powerful, is only one response to betrayal. Grief, reflection, and self-preservation were equally important, and learning to balance them was part of reclaiming my life. One evening, sitting alone on my apartment balcony with the city lights stretching endlessly before me, I thought about Alex and Jenna. The rage that had consumed me for months was now tempered with clarity. I understood that they were flawed, selfish, and manipulative, yes. But more importantly, I understood that their actions no longer controlled me. I had been their victim, but I was no longer a prisoner. I had survived the betrayal, navigated the heartbreak, and emerged stronger, more aware, more guarded, and more capable of protecting myself. And that was the thing about betrayal. It changes you, sometimes irrevocably. It forces you to confront the fragility of trust, the complexity of human desire, and the limitations of your own perception. But it also forces you to grow, to adapt, and to reclaim control over the life that has been stolen from you. It's not easy, and it's never clean, but it is possible. And eventually, I realized that the person I had been before, the one who trusted too easily, who gave love freely without protection, was gone. In their place was someone sharper, more cautious, but still capable of love, still capable of hope, still capable of reclaiming happiness on her own terms. I never spoke to Alex again. I don't know where he went, what he did, or who he became. And Jenna? She faded from my life entirely, a ghost of a friendship I once believed in. But I kept moving forward. I started a new project, a new podcast with a team I trusted, a team that valued honesty above all else. I poured myself into it with every ounce of energy I had, determined to create something authentic, something that reflected my experience, my pain, and my resilience. In the end, the betrayal taught me one painful truth. People will hurt you, sometimes in ways you can't imagine, and sometimes those people are the ones you love most. But surviving that hurt doesn't mean erasing it, forgiving it, or pretending it didn't happen. Surviving it means acknowledging it, understanding it, and using it to fuel your own growth. It means setting boundaries, demanding respect, and refusing to allow the pain inflicted by others to define your self-worth. I still think about those months often. I think about the texts, the laughter, the betrayal, the confrontations. I think about how it felt to realize that someone I loved and someone I considered a friend had conspired against me. And I remember the moments after, when I sat alone in my apartment, listening to the city hum outside my window, crying, screaming, shaking, and finally beginning to breathe again. Those moments, as raw and unbearable as they were, became the foundation for my recovery. Now, when I reflect on it, I don't feel the same rage every day. I feel cautious, sure, and protective of my heart. I feel pride in the fact that I survived the emotional storm, that I didn't let them destroy me completely. And sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet and the snow is falling softly outside, I allow myself to smile at the memory of that resilience,
at the realization that I am still here, still whole, and still capable of love, on my own terms, with boundaries stronger than before, with a voice more confident and clear than ever. The betrayal of Alex and Jenna was a wound that left scars, but it also revealed something essential about myself. That even when the people I love most turn out to be the ones I can't trust, I am still capable of standing up, walking forward, and reclaiming the life that is mine. And while I will always carry the memory of that pain, I now carry it not as a mark of shame, but as proof of survival, proof of resilience, and proof that even in the darkest moments of deceit, heartbreak, and manipulation, it is possible to find your own light again.